Our week 2 start sit lineup primer is back. Make sure you drop a like if you enjoyed the video, and let's get your lineup set for this week. We're going to start with our guarantees. Let the record show I kicked his butt in guarantees last week, and I'm going to do it again this week. I'm going to start with my first one, Ricky.
I guess this is a consolation prize for me destroying you in the flock league.
Yeah, well, you were in the toilet bowl last year and I won, so I think you'll get there eventually. But looking at Ricky Pearsall in the matchup for the San Francisco 49ers, they have the New Orleans Saints this week. You'll, spoiler alert, know that I'm very low on Jauan Jennings for this week. San Francisco projects to score a lot of points against the New Orleans defense. The matchup is obviously great. New Orleans last year gave up the 8th most amount of points to fantasy wide receivers. You're looking at Ricky Pearsall's matchup. He's going to have one of these 3 cornerbacks, Alontae Taylor on him, Kool-Aid McKinstry, or Isaac Yiadom. All 3 of those guys and their PFF grades from a cornerback perspective, not great. And so we do give Ricky Pearsall a pretty big advantage there, not to mention no George Kittle this week. Jauan Jennings is day-to-day. Jauan Jennings also only had 3 points last week. Brandon Ayuk is not playing. I don't know what else you want. Ricky Pearsall is an absolute smash must-start this week. No question, he is going to kill this week. My second guarantee for the week is going to be Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason playing the Atlanta Falcons this week. It's going to be probably a higher-scoring game. When you're looking at the defensive front for the Atlanta Falcons, 22nd of 32 on PFF in terms of those statistics. And then also when you're looking at Jordan Mason, last week he was fairly productive. He just didn't find the end zone. My guess is he finds the end zone this week, and you're going to see Jordan Mason drop a 12 to 14 point game. He had 15 attempts last week. Again, if he would have scored a touchdown last week, he would have had 14 points. Obviously, he's not getting the receiving upside, the big play upside that Aaron Jones has, but I do think he finds the end zone in week 2 versus the Atlanta Falcons. And then finally, Zay Flowers. Obviously, this one's not a super hot take after last week, but Zay Flowers, I'm just giving a guarantee because I know that Zay Flowers is going to absolutely pop off this week. When you look at the matchup again, they have the Cleveland Browns this week. And so last week even, you saw Cleveland do pretty well against Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So I think a lot of people, because of that, are going to look at Zay and they're going to be like, yeah, you know what? It's not really that great of a matchup. But in fact, it is. Denzel Ward, Greg Newsome, Miles Harden being the corners there. We give the advantage there to Zay Flowers in all of those matchups. Zay Flowers coming off of a big week. Mark Andrews didn't do anything last week. I think Rashad Bateman may have a little bit of a slower week, but for Zay Flowers, I am guaranteeing from a matchup perspective that he is going to pop off this week. So my 3 guarantees of the week: Ricky Pearsall, Jordan Mason, and Zay Flowers.
So I'm going to start with David Montgomery this week. You had a really, really tough matchup week 1. Again, the first week that Detroit doesn't have Ben Johnson as their play caller. And you still saw David Montgomery actually salvage his day with like 8.5 points. He had 11 carries, 4 targets, 4 receptions. So the receiving usage actually really was a big reason that he saved his day there in what was a really tough one with Micah Parsons, obviously, being a Green Bay Packer now. But now you've got them going up against Chicago this week. And when you look at those green lights, the matchups there, you've got a green light matchup, a green light offense, obviously, because they're still going to be productive in Detroit for this season, and then a Vegas light, which is also green. We expect that to be a higher scoring game. So this is the reunion show with Ben Johnson going up against his old team. But I do think you're probably going to see a productive game. You saw 2 less talented running backs in Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason both get their own in terms of volume against Chicago in week 1, and they both had some decent production there. So I would expect Monty to take a step up this week and be a really nice flex option for you. I also am going to take another number 2 option in an offense at the wide receiver position and go with George Pickens. Classic George Pickens. Again, he's going to have some boom weeks. He's going to have some bust weeks. He had 6 points against the Philadelphia Eagles in week 1, where if you remember, the whole flow of that game was entirely screwed up by that second halftime that we had to deal with. And the explosive nature of the Dallas Cowboys offense was kind of lackluster after that second break. So Pickens getting 4 targets for 3 receptions and 30 yards. It wasn't anything super pretty in week 1, but again, one of those matchups, it's like you're playing the Philadelphia Eagles secondary, and now you've got a matchup against the Giants in week 2 that's legit like night and day. So this is a matchup that I really do think is built for George Pickens to have a solid opportunity to get a couple of red zone targets and a potential to get a touchdown in this week, which I think makes him a really nice flex option as well. Jacoby Myers, the wide receiver 1 in his offense with Geno Smith throwing on the ball. I think from here on out, this is going to be one, again, that some people would be like, well, yeah, of course I'm flexing Jacoby Myers. I mean, that was not an of course heading into the season. I mean, Jacoby Myers consistently is drafted as a guy in the 7th round or later, like every single year, and he always exceeds expectations. And with Brock Bowers now banged up, Geno Smith throwing him the ball instead of Aiden O'Connell, this is a season where I would expect Myers to have tons and tons of production. And I think that'll continue on again in a matchup in week 2 that is going to be fine for him. Going up against the LA Chargers, where you saw a couple of the receiving options, Hollywood Brown, Travis Kelce, even Tyquan Thornton getting a couple of deep balls in week 1 against the Chargers for the Chiefs. I think in a divisional matchup against LA, you're going to have a nice week from Jacoby.
All right, my 3 sits of the week that we're adding this week. I'm going to start with Cooper Kupp. Nathan says this is too obvious. I don't think it is. I think in a lot of home and casual leagues, there are a ton of people that still really want to start Cooper Kupp on a week-to-week basis. And I know that because I know in home leagues he went in the 8th, 9th round a lot, which was way too high for us. The Pittsburgh Steelers, when you're talking about who's going to be on Cooper Kupp, it's going to be one of Joey Porter Jr. It probably will be Darius Slay or Joey Porter Jr. there for the Steelers. And so, I mean, obviously, if he's up against Joey Porter, then maybe that's better, but it's probably going to be Slay, and Slay will probably cook Cooper Kupp. I mean, Cooper Kupp last week only had 3 points. I think he only had 3 targets last week.
Cooper Kupp is cooked.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp. And we're staying consistent here, but it's also just a poor matchup for the wide receiver 2 in the Seattle offense. It happens to be Cooper Kupp, and so matchup-wise, we don't love it this week, and so he's not going in any of my lineups. Keon Coleman, coming off of his week where we really liked what he did, and, honestly, sung his praises a lot this week. I do think it's going to be tough for him this week because my guess is that they're going to put Sauce Gardner on Keon Coleman. And Sauce Gardner is one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL and does directly impact fantasy football wide receiver production. Keon Coleman obviously being young, he's still second-year wide receiver. I think Sauce Gardner will get the better of him in this matchup, and I think Sauce is probably going to make Keon Coleman's fantasy day a little bit more muted. And so I'm going to go play the matchup there, even though I think the Bills will probably crush the Jets. I'm going to guess Shakir actually has a decent day. And then my last sit of the week, I already kind of alluded to this with my Ricky Pearsall start. But really, when you're looking at Juwan Jennings in the matchup against the Saints, it's not terrible. Again, the wide receiver matchup against the Saints is not terrible this week. But Juwan Jennings is going to probably play, but he's day-to-day. He didn't do well last week. He hasn't played all year. In my opinion, there's no way you can start Juwan Jennings. So he's still a must-sit for me in week 2 for fantasy football.
So Zach Charbonnet, there's been a lot of hype with him, obviously getting way more opportunity than we expected week 1 for the Seattle Seahawks. The reason I have him as a shaky option this week is, again, I think that excitement has kind of boiled over to a point where we're like, oh, well, yeah, you got to start Zach Charbonnet. No, you don't necessarily have to. I mean, you're looking at a situation where in terms of touches, this was a 50-50 even split. Charbonnet with 12 touches on the ground. We know Charbonnet doesn't get a ton of receiving usage. Walker will kind of on and off get some targets here and there. He had 10 rushing attempts and then 3 targets and 3 receptions as well. Was not efficient with that receiving usage at all. But again, when you're looking at a snap share split here of 58% for Charbonnet and 40% for Kenneth Walker, this isn't pretty for either of these guys. It's kind of the same dilemma that we're going to be faced with every single week for Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason, and why we're going to have to be figuring that out probably for the foreseeable future between those two guys. I think until we figure out who's actually going to get more opportunities in the red zone week in and week out between Charbonnet and Walker, then we'll be more comfortable telling you exactly, who you should start and who you should sit. But for all intents and purposes right now, I'm not really pumped about starting Zach Charbonnet heading into a matchup against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's not going to be very friendly to, I think, either of those guys. And keep in mind, for as exciting as it was to see Charbonnet get those red zone touches in this week 1 matchup against San Francisco, that was like one of their few red zone trips on the entire day where Charbonnet just happened to be on the field to get that goal line carry, whereas the other ones where Walker was on the field the whole time, they just didn't get to the red zone. So this could easily flip depending on the chances of who's on the field, who's got the series between these two running backs. It quite literally is a toss-up. So not comfortable with Charbonnet this week. I'm also not comfortable with Jalen Waddle. We're going into year 3 of Jalen Waddle being one of the most disgusting starts week in and week out, and you have no idea when he's going to produce. He did not produce last year, and he will not produce from here on out. Tyreek Hill can't produce, so if Tyreek Hill is struggling to produce, how do you think that Jalen Waddle is going to do anything at all? And I know this will come back and bite me, and I'll end up being totally wrong, and you can dunk on me, and that's totally fine. Jalen Waddle is the number 2 there in an offense that looks abysmal. It got worked by the Colts. And now they're playing New England, which is expected to be a low-scoring game. I'm not expecting anything from Jalen Waddle. If you can help it, sit him. Stephon Diggs, I also have as a sit this week. He was okay last week. He had I think 7 targets. He hauled in 6 of those, 57 yards. Again, you're kind of seeing the same type of Stephon Diggs that you saw in Houston before he went down with the ACL tear. But in a less ideal situation for his skill set in terms of the production upside, because now you have Keon Butte, who was more efficient with his usage and opportunity week 1. You have Demario Douglas getting touchdowns, and you have a running back room committee right now between Ramondre and Henderson, and then Drake May obviously with his rushing upside. This is just not as pretty as that Houston Texans situation, and while a lot of people expected him to be the unquestioned number 1 there, you see him have the same amount of opportunity in terms of targets as Demario Douglas and Keon Butte. So for the guy that's going to be pretty much a slot option there, like I'm not expecting a lot in terms of the upside for Stephon Diggs in a matchup against Miami. So if again, for a guy like him, if you can start a running back like Jordan Mason, who Avery mentioned as a start this week, I would much rather start Jordan Mason over Stephon Diggs.
All right, let's get to our matchups of the week here for wide receivers. Devonta Smith versus Travis Hunter. Which one are you more comfortable starting this week?
The reason I put these on here is because I'm struggling to decide between the
I have an answer
between them. Hunter going up against Cincinnati, which, I mean, when you saw what Tillman and Judy and Fannin and Njoku were all able to do with that passing volume, the Bugles are in shambles this week. But then you look at Devonta Smith and it's like, okay, I mean, he doesn't have a too shabby matchup against Kansas City, who just got absolutely worked by all the receivers there. I think you got to go with the experience vet and go with Devonta Smith this week.
Correct.
That's just what I would lean for a guy like Hunter, who, again, he didn't have a terrible week. He had like 8 or 9 points.
Yeah, he did well.
He was fine. He outproduced Devonta Smith, doubled his points. But again, anyone could watch that game against Carolina, which was a much better matchup for Hunter and BTJ, and they both didn't really do anything. That offense is going to have to find its own and figure it out with Liam Cohen as the play caller. That might take a couple more weeks, whereas you have an established offensive system for the Philadelphia Eagles, which is going to mean less volume, but it is going to mean higher upside opportunity for guys like Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown, who have produced in that situation for the last couple of years.
Yeah, I agree. Devonta Smith's probably going to have Shamari Connor on him for most of the game. Trent McDuffie's going to be on A.J. Brown. If anything, it's another tough matchup for A.J. Brown this week. Devonta Smith should be a guy that they target pretty consistently, as well as maybe Dallas Goedert in the passing game there for this week.
Number 2s in tougher matchups become interesting starts.
Yes, they do.
A lot of times. So.
We had Deebo on here last week, and we said not to start him. What are you doing this week? Deebo, Samuel, or Jameson Williams this week? I think that this one's tough, but I'd probably just lean Deebo. Jameson Williams matchup against the Bears I don't love. Again, the Bears are very good against fantasy football wide receivers right now. You have Nashawn right there. You have Tyreek Stevenson. You have Nick McLeod. Obviously, if McLeod's on him the whole game, then sure. But like Tyreek Stevenson and Nashawn Wright are very good cornerbacks, and they have been very effective at shutting down wide receivers. Even the Vikings wide receivers could get nothing done against them, even Justin Jefferson. So I'm very skeptical starting Jameson Williams in this matchup. And for the Bears, it's a little bit different because the wide receiver 2 there, they actually have 2 good cornerbacks on the Bears, and so it's actually not a great wide receiver 2 matchup, and it's not a great wide receiver 1 matchup either. We did see Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, have a good game against them last year. But when you're looking at Deebo as well, Deebo's matchup against the Green Bay Packers is also not great. However, I think it's honestly probably worse for Terry McLaurin. I think Deebo is going to get a lot of easy targets. I would lean just starting Deebo Samuel after week 1 and rolling with that momentum. Jameson Williams is eventually going to have a bounce back, but my guess is his bounce back comes in week 3. So
I lean Deebo as well. So I'm with you there.
George Pickens or DJ Moore this week?
Well, I was just talking about George Pickens. I expect a bounce back from him. When you looked at the target volume that DJ Moore got, it wasn't much prettier than what George Pickens got in a tougher matchup in week 1. So I'm going to bet on what is going to be the friendlier matchup against the New York Giants this week for the Dallas Cowboys and George Pickens.
I think I would probably go Pickens as well. DJ Moore, again, that matchup is on the other side of the ball for DJ Moore. I mean, that's obviously
he's got a more positive one against the Lions.
Yeah, it's not bad, but again, Rome got most of the volume there last week. Whereas Pickens is going to be hit or miss, so you're essentially like playing the lottery here if you think Pickens is going to hit, but it is a good matchup for him against the New York Giants.
At this point, are we playing the lottery with DJ Moore every single week too if he's going to get that volume?
Essentially, yes.
Yeah, it's touchdown or bust, right?
Yeah, so I kind of agree with you there. And then Khalil Shakir versus Keon Coleman. This week, I'm going Khalil Shakir. Again, I think they're going to put sauce on Keon, and so I think that Khalil Shakir is going to get a lot of the easy targets this week. Maybe even Kincaid is a streamable option at tight end this week again, but I think that it's going to be Keon Coleman that has the rougher day. I think it's going to be Khalil Shakir that has the better day. Again, a wide receiver 2 in a bad matchup against the New York Jets from a cornerback standpoint. They should score a lot of points. I'm honestly just curious here. Khalil Shakir last year, against the New York Jets in 2 games. Let's see what he did last year.
He missed like half the game.
He missed half the game in week 6.
He had like 5 or 6 points at the end of the year against the Jets. So it wasn't pretty.
So they honestly wasn't great for him, but Keon Coleman was worse even against some of those guys. And so
I lean Shakir as well. I mean, again, we kind of err on the side of raising your floor in the first couple of weeks of the season. And then you kind of look for the ceiling upside plays in the middle of and second half of the season when you start having a more like regular, consistent prediction of like you know what these guys are going to do and you know what the upside plays are going to be. Right now, we're just trying to figure out who's going to be the consistent upside play week in and week out, and we need to see more of these from Keon Coleman before we're comfortable saying, yeah, you want to flex him over Shakir every single week.
All right, Jaylen Warren versus Isaiah Pacheco this week. This one is tough because, I mean, honestly, don't love any of these guys. Jaylen Warren playing Seattle, and you don't feel good about the volume there. Isaiah Pacheco playing Philly. I'm going to start the one on the better offense, and I'm going to go Pacheco here. That really is the deal breaker for me when you're looking at the matchup. Pacheco has the worst matchup here. That really makes it close for me, actually, because Jaylen Warren does have a matchup against Seattle Seahawks. It's not a bad matchup, whereas Isaiah Pacheco playing the Philadelphia Eagles, that one is tough. We have them both in the F tier for this week. Pacheco has the offensive advantage. Warren has the matchup advantage.
Another thing to factor in here is that whole game plan was kind of flipped upside down going against the Chargers when Worthy went down early in the game. So they were just kind of playing, it looked like they were kind of playing backyard football. They're probably going to have a game plan heading into this week where they might be a little more run heavy for the Chiefs if Worthy misses
I'm gonna go best offense. I'll go Pacheco.
I'm on the fence as well with you because Jaylen Warren also again has a matchup with really just Pacheco being the more efficient runner when he does get opportunity. 45% snap share in week 1 for Jaylen Warren, 50% snap share for Pacheco in week 1. But you had twice the amount of carries for Jaylen Warren. And then you have the receiving usage potential for Pacheco as well, which he had 3 targets in week 1 against the Chargers. So this one's tough, man, because you also have Jalen Carter, who's going to be back. He is not suspended for this game. Oh man,
it's so close.
I'm gonna go with Jaylen Warren here. I'm gonna split it, just honestly to kind of make a point that it is really that close between these guys. Caleb Johnson is a non-factor for the foreseeable future. Kenneth Gainwell will get opportunities in that offense for Pittsburgh, but it could easily be Kareem Hunt getting those goal line touches if they even get to the goal line with that front four for the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'm going to go with Warren this week. I trust the receiving upside a little bit more than I do Pacheco.
All right, next matchup that we have here for this week is going to be Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt or Tyrone Tracy. In terms of matchups for this one, Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt, him and Austin Eckler both have the Green Bay Packers. It's a decent matchup for them. Tyrone Tracy, on the other hand, this week has the Dallas Cowboys, a decent matchup for him as well. I think Tracy's still going to get all the volume there this week. I would probably still lean Tyrone Tracy over Ja'Cory Cross-Merritt for this week. I would take the guy that I know is going to get the volume this week and has the most touchdown upside. So I'll go Tyrone Tracy in this matchup.
So breaking down just what they did last week, 74% snap share, 10 carries for 24 yards, and then 5 targets for Tyrone Tracy. Only hauled in 2, but still 5 targets is really nice. And then I'm just cross-referencing here to make sure. Cross-Merritt, 33% snap share, 10 attempts for 82 yards, so a lot more efficient on the ground, but there's not going to be any receiving usage at all there for him because Eckler is that guy. So I'm with you as well. I think I would lean Tyrone Tracy.
Javonte or David Montgomery this week. I think you're going to go David Montgomery. He's one of your starts for the week.
Yeah, I actually like David Montgomery and Javonte Williams both in their own right heading into this week. But I think I will lean David Montgomery. I just trust that offense a little bit better.
Yeah, I'll go Javonte Williams here. I like that he is going to 100% get the red zone touches, whereas David Montgomery might get the red zone touches.
It's nice that he's the number one.
Yeah, I honestly believe in the volume more for Javonte. I think he could have a good week, so I'm going to go Javonte over David Montgomery. And then finally here, Dylan Sampson versus Jordan Mason this week. I always have Jordan Mason as my star. I'm going to go with Jordan Mason.
Yeah, I'll take the better offense as well. I'm going to go Jordan Mason.
And then tight ends, Goedert or Ferguson this week in that matchup. I would lean Dallas Goedert. I think that against the Chiefs, he might end up being the safety blanket in the passing game. I mean, the Eagles are not going to be able to run the ball all over the Kansas City Chiefs. They're not going to be able to do what they do every single week. They're going to have to throw the ball 25 times plus in this game.
Yeah.
And so I think Goedert could end up getting a decent amount of targets and have 10 plus points this week. So I'm going to go Dallas Goedert here.
I'll split it and I'll go Jake Ferguson. Dallas Goedert last week had 7 targets, and I think Ferguson had the same. against Philly. He had 6 targets for 5 receptions. He wasn't really efficient with that at all. Goedert ended up having the more productive day. But again, at the end of the day, for a guy that was a Goedert owner last season, it is so unpredictable whether he's going to drop like 12 or if he's going to do absolutely nothing. And generally, again, those games where he's productive is when A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith do nothing. So if we are expecting A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith to do something, then I think the odd man out has got to be Goedert with just the overall lack of volume there. So I'll go with Ferguson.
Okay. And then a couple rookies real quick. Travion Henderson, we're still comfortable starting him this week, I think, so we're going to tell people to give it a go for Travion. Harvey, I think we're going to mostly tell people to sit this week, just until at least we get the volume there. So again, hopefully this helps you set your lineups. Again, if you enjoy this type of video and you enjoyed us doing this on the Fridays so you can watch it up to the games on Sundays, make sure you drop a like. Also, make sure you subscribe. We're going to have this every single week so you can get it straight to your feed when it comes up, help you set your lineups for fantasy football. We appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you later.